Hey everyone, before we start the show, I just want to get some plugs out of the way. If you enjoy this podcast and you're into wrestling, check out the Nerds and Marks podcast or Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling. If you're not getting your fill on movie and entertainment discussion, then check out the Entertainment Buffet podcast. If you want to dive into the world of video games, I highly recommend the Darkcast by my friends over at darkstation.com. Listen to them cover important topics and interview men and women from all over the industry. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello everybody and welcome to Shelved. I'm your host, Jeremy Meyer. Alright, I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. My episode didn't go up on Monday, and I want to say it was because of the holiday, but in truth, it was because I didn't plan ahead and all of my editing equipment was left at work. So sorry, but this episode's going up on Tuesday. But I hope everybody had a great weekend. I did. It was beautiful weather here in the Chicago area, and spent a good amount of time out walking around. We didn't really do anything with family, but I had a great time, and I see a lot of people having fun on Instagram and social media and stuff like that, so I hope everybody else had a great time as well. What I did do this weekend is I watched a lot of movies, so we got a jam-packed review episode for this mini episode. But first we need to get some business out of the way and talk about the script that we're going to be discussing on Friday. So on Friday, just in time for Wonder Woman, we are going to be taking a look at an unmade Wonder Woman script written by Joss Whedon. Yeah, that's right. Joss Whedon, who currently, I guess, has taken over directing for Zack Snyder due to his family tragedy, which really sorry to hear that. Joss Whedon has stepped in to finish the Justice League movie, which is still set to come out this November. My feelings go out to Zack Snyder and his family for the tragedy that they suffered about his daughter. But this is a really interesting turn of events. I know a lot of people weren't very big on Zack Snyder's directing, but I mean, don't be fooled. This is still going to be the Zack Snyder Justice League movie. Joss Whedon has to keep in tone with that. But the word is that there were rewrites planned around March, and Joss Whedon was supposed to write and direct those rewrites, but it sounds like it may be a little more in depth of a directing job than that. But there's not a whole lot of information out there about it. That's kind of just what I've been picking up. But it's a very interesting turn of events. I've never heard of anything like this happening before. I mean, I guess aside maybe if a director had passed away, maybe that situation has been done. But someone stepping down from a tragedy, that's all new to me. But Joss Whedon seems to have had a interesting path with the superhero genre. The Wonder Woman script is dated from 2006, and then that never happened. And we all know him as the director of the Avengers now, so he made it there eventually, just from the other side. And now he's over with DC doing Batgirl and finishing up Justice League. So it's a really interesting path for him in the superhero movie genre, and I'll be very curious to see where that goes. But yeah, so the script we're going to be talking about on Friday is Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman, and you can find that on our Tumblr, www.shelvedfilmpodcast.tumblr.com. And I believe I actually put up the script for next week's episode as well, so you might be able to find that if you're interested, and get a little sneak peek into the future of the show. But all right, let's jump into these movie reviews. I got 4 of them, and I'm going to try to be as spoiler-free as possible. Obviously, if I'm going to spoil anything, I will let you know, because there are some of these I might want to talk a little more in depth about. But the first one, I guess I'll just go in order that I watched, and the first one I'll talk about is Alien Covenant. Now, this was my most anticipated movie of the year. Prometheus is one of my favorite movies, and I just rewatched it this weekend as well. So technically I watched 5 movies. And I forgot how much I love Prometheus. It's just such a beautiful movie. I love the mystery behind it. It's just, to me, that is like my perfect kind of sci-fi movie. And Alien Covenant is the follow-up to that, but obviously it didn't have Prometheus 2 in the title. It was straight up Alien. And that's definitely more of what we got. It's more of an alien movie. I really enjoyed it. I did like the movie. I had some disappointment with it. There's just still a lot of lingering questions from Prometheus that didn't get answered. And to me, it feels like Ridley Scott wanted to make Prometheus 2, and the studio was like, look, we need to fast track having aliens in this prequel series. Because I guess he'd always envisioned the prequel series being 3 films, with Prometheus being the first. But I never heard anything about that until recently. And he's already said that he started writing the sequel for Alien Covenant, which it's not doing super well at the box office. Like, it's doing fine. Like, it cleared its budget over like a week and a half, or the first weekend, or I guess that was probably just first week then. So, I mean, I don't know how much they spent on marketing. Usually you double it for marketing, but I guess it is struggling at the US box office. Hopefully it's doing well overseas, because I mean, Alien, I think, is a franchise they will, even if a movie does pretty weak, they'll still do another one, just because it's a franchise that's very popular. It's been around for a long time, and I think the movie is going to do well enough to justify a sequel. And I hope they do, just because Alien Covenant leaves us with more questions than Prometheus did, and there's some really enjoyable scenes in the movie. I really like the score. I was actually listening to the score before I saw the movie, and it's I know I don't have this guy's name in front of me, but he did the score for Alien Covenant, and he also did the score for Assassin's Creed, and he's more of a newer composer in the film world, I believe. Jed Kurzel is his name. I think he's part of a band. I don't really know much about him, but he did this score and the score for Assassin's Creed, and I really love both of them. So I think he's one of those guys I'm going to be watching in the music industry to see what other kind of scores he does for movies. Yeah, I really enjoy both of them, and I would recommend both of them. But Alien, it does a lot of things right. The tone, the first half I really love, and the middle has kind of a rocky section, and then the end is really great. And I don't know, I wanted more answers. I wanted to know more about the surviving crew of the Prometheus. I mean, David and Shaw being those two. And we get a good amount of David in the movie, but the resolution with Shaw is a little disappointing, and just the engineers are not as featured in the movie as I would have liked them to be. Like, that, the whole wrap up of that story feels rushed and feels like a studio stepped in and was like, hey, Prometheus was fine and all, but it underperformed to our expectations. Although that movie made quite a bit of money, so I don't know why anyone would really feel disappointed by it. And yeah, it sounds like they just stepped in, like, hey, we need to fast track these prequels, and if they're planning on doing one more, and the word was always it's going to end right where Alien begins, I don't know how they get there at this point. Like, I feel like after Prometheus there was a clear path, but now it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know what you do to bridge those, and even in my head it'd be hard to write that sequel. So I mean, hopefully we get another one and they can bring it all together. And, you know, while we get aliens in this movie, they're not exactly 100% the aliens we're familiar with. They still feel like an early stage. So I still think there's like another step involved, and the way the aliens are created, I'm fine with. But it definitely feels like they're still going to be moving forward with improvements on that. So overall, Alien Covenant, it's fun, it's good, but fans of Prometheus will be slightly disappointed. So moving on to the next movie that I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and obviously this was a big one for this year. The first Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody really knew anything about that series going in, and then it ended up being this huge hit, and everybody loved that movie, me included. It's easily one of my favorite Marvel movies. So going into 2, I definitely had some reservations, like, you know, was it a lightning strike that they wouldn't be able to recreate? I was hearing some people say, you know, I heard everyone was saying it was good, but I heard mixed feelings of, oh, it's better than the first one, it's the same as the first one, it's good but not as good as the first one. And I definitely fall into the latter. I really liked it. but it's not as good as the first one, and it's really hard because that first one set the bar so damn high because expectations were so low, and they nailed it. And to me, the first one just has a lot more memorable scenes. The soundtrack is better because obviously the music plays a big part. When I think of memorable scenes in this one, I can only think of a couple. Versus, like, in the first one, the prison breakout is a huge highlight sequence for me. That is a fucking hilarious and brilliant way to go about that prison breakout of, hey, we could have this whole movie about being broken out of prison, but instead we have to improvise and do it in, like, 15 seconds, and that was a super great scene. In this one, there's a great scene with Yondu and an arrow, and the scene before that with Baby Groot, who I was feeling I was not going to like Baby Groot. I didn't know he was going to be a baby the whole movie, but I ended up finding him obviously very cute, very funny. Kurt Russell was really great in the movie, and I'm kind of on the stance of they should just start cramming Kurt Russell into all my favorite franchises, because when they put him in Fast and Furious, it also got really good. And yeah, having him in Guardians of the Galaxy, he was great. And having read the comics, the father figure to Peter Quill is like, he looks the part in the movie, but it's a very different character. Like it's in this, he's Ego, the living planet, and in the comics that is not the case. He's just a space dude. And I was kind of expecting that he wouldn't actually be his father, and there was some kind of workaround, but Ego actually being his father it's an interesting way to take it, and it's original for the movie, but I was like, I kind of thought maybe it would lead into a third one where we'd finally get the real answer, that maybe he was pretending to be his dad for some reason. But I really liked it. There was definitely a lot more comedy. Mantis as the new character didn't grab me as much because she kind of felt like an abuse victim, so she made me feel a little uncomfortable on screen from time to time. But overall, it's really great. It's hard to hold up to that first one. It is really funny. There are some great action scenes, and yeah, they're coming hard with the comedy and hard with the music. A little too many slow motion walk to music scenes. There's like 4 of them in the movie, and it's just like, all right, guys, we get it. We know that you know that we liked the music parts of the movie, and they kind of went a little heavy on that, but overall, it's really great. I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, I know I'm kind of late to all of these for the most part. And my next 2 reviews are movies that are actually, like, one of them's out on Blu-ray and one of them's about to come out. So I'm always a little late to these things, but so far as 2 that are still in theaters, Alien Covenant and Guardians of the Galaxy, I would recommend to different degrees. And I guess I can give some ratings on these. For Alien Covenant, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Like, it's totally fine, but they definitely could have done more with it. And Guardians, I'd give a 5 out of 5, but I would give the first one the same, and the first one is better. But yeah, overall, both great movies. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the lower end of my spectrum here, and I saw Resident Evil, the final chapter. These movies have always felt like an obligation for me because, for one, I watch all video game movies. There's still a few I haven't seen, but for the most part, I've seen almost every one of them. And Resident Evil is one of my favorite video game franchises. Resident Evil 2 is in my top 3 video games of all time. And the movies have never done the games justice. Paul W.S. Anderson has wrote and directed all of them, except he didn't direct 3. And I'll say they're all bad movies. Like, I think all of them are bad. But the first 3 are kind of guilty pleasures. They're bad but enjoyable. The third one is probably my favorite. And they... Actually, in a way, the second one is definitely the worst of the first 3. But the second one is kind of my favorite because it's the only one that stays even remotely true to the games, where it kind of redoes Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which is one of the best games in the series. And oh god, they just get worse from 4, 5, and 6. 4 was the first kind of really bad one, but it still had a little bit of enjoyment to it. 5 was so bad that I was just offended watching it. Like, the way and this has kind of happened in all the movies, but the way he just crams in creatures from the game and makes it, like, doesn't even justify them. Like, in 4, all of a sudden, Like, we've been living in a world where zombies are slow moving, undead creatures like classic zombies. And then now all of a sudden in 4, they've evolved to be the enemies from Resident Evil 4 and 5, even though those weren't zombies. They were creatures created from a parasite with no explanation. You're just supposed to know what's going on. And then in 5, Retribution, it's just, we're going to throw everything at you. We're literally going to name drop stuff that doesn't even make sense to somebody who's never played the game. Like, there's a scene in particular where in Resident Evil 4, the main bad guy creatures were created by something called a Las Plagas parasite. And in Resident Evil Retribution, one of the characters injects this parasite into their neck in the movie, and one character is just like, it's the Las Plagas. And anybody watching the movie who is not a fan of the games would be completely fucking lost. They would have because at no point in the movie was that ever explained what that is. It was so frustrating to me watching that movie just because none of it was making sense. The plot was so stupid. And I was just getting so angry. And so this one, it's the last one, and they're already talking about rebooting, which is something they mentioned a long time ago. It was very weird that they did just announce it like right away. But it was, so going in, it's the last one, so we can finish this and then move on to a reboot and hopefully stick closer to the games. But I will say I enjoyed this one a little more up until the last 15 minutes. The last 15 minutes of this movie were some of the worst writing I have ever seen. It's so, first of all, this movie just starts retconning everything right from the beginning. It opens up with this whole history of the T-Virus and the Umbrella Corporation that we've never heard before, and is just coming out of nowhere to justify things they're going to do in the movie. The movie is given an arbitrary timer where right in the beginning she's contacted by the Red Queen, and she's like, hey, by my estimates, there's 4,000 humans left on the planet, and they're all going to be dead within 48 hours. We don't know why. The assumption would be that, they're finally going to get taken by zombies, and that's going to be the end of it. And so we have this timer throughout the whole movie, and it's one of those things where so they introduced the whole, all right, I'm going to start spoiling this movie a little bit. It's not very good, so you shouldn't care, but I kind of have to talk about the ending. So the whole concept here is there's an airborne antivirus that'll kill anything that the T-Virus has infected, and so the whole point is to get that and release it. And she does at the end. And it, of course, is one of those situations where she releases it with only seconds to go on the timer. But you're telling me that theoretically, all the humans are going to be dead within 48 hours. So my assumption was, hey, as this timer is going, people are going to be dying. So if you end it with 1 second left, hey, maybe you saved one person. And that doesn't make any sense. So at the end, when she breaks the antivirus, they basically just all the attacks on the last human settlements have been called off. So it's these were Umbrella people that were going to go kill them. And a big thing with this franchise has always been why is this secret organization trying to kill all the humans on Earth? Well, why are they still being an evil organization when they're the world is dead? And it just doesn't make any sense. And this one actually tried to justify that, saying that they actually orchestrated the T-Virus outbreak themselves, and they were doing it so they could recreate the world in their image. And it's finally, they've justified why this corporation is still doing stupid shit while the world is falling apart. But it's such a flimsy fucking premise and so stupid. Makes no sense. I don't know, it's so bad. And everything, the movie, for one, I will say, has some really fucked up editing. It's so fast and hard cut. It's hard to even keep track of what's going on. And I will say the movie looks, the production value of this movie looks better than any of the previous movies. And they do a good job there. And there's some interesting callbacks to previous movies. But there's a couple not flashbacks, but rewind scenes where they show so first of all, she hands somebody a gun, and then that person turns out to be a traitor, and later he goes to pull the trigger, and the gun's empty. And then they do a rewind scene to when she handed him the gun to show that she emptied all the rounds. But we watched her load that gun in that scene, and there was zero time when she could have done that. And then there's another stupid fucking rewind scene later where they're in the room with the bad guy, and she's looking at all these things around the room and picturing how she could kill him with it. And then he's like, oh, don't worry about it. None of that's going to work. And then they show another rewind scene where they're showing him counter everything she does to kill her. And it just makes no fucking sense. And it's such a waste of time. And is literally this part is where it all started to fall apart for me. And it was, that movie is terrible. I gave that one a 2 out of 5 because the beginning it's just action scene, action scene, action scene. Those action scenes are actually pretty decent. There's some good combat moments in the movie, even though the editing kind of makes it hard to follow. But then the last 15 minutes kind of undo everything, and it gets stupid story-wise, even for what this franchise is used to. So that one, it's a hard pass. I mean, I felt obligated to watch it just because I had to finish it. It was the last one. I've seen them all, and if you are not that interested in the series, I would just say maybe don't watch it. Okay, now the last movie I saw, which I literally finished this morning as I'm recording this podcast, is the Lego Batman movie. I have been waiting to watch this since it was announced in theaters, and I fucking loved this movie so hard. I'll just say it's a 5 out of 5 for me. It is hilarious. It is so smart. It's so well written, and nothing is sacred. Like, everything that Warner Brothers owns is up here. Like, because it's Lego, they have a bunch of licenses. Since it's Warner Brothers, they own a bunch of things. So, first of all, no Batman lore is safe. They straight up reference every Batman movie and make fun of it in a very interesting and funny way. They make fun of Suicide Squad pretty blatantly. They have Lego Voldemort and Lego Sauron in the movie because, hey, Warner Brothers. And it's insane. It's hilarious. And I could not recommend this movie anymore. Will Arnett is amazing as Batman. Literally from the opening logos, you have Will Arnett as Batman narrating the logos. And it's like, already I knew this movie was going to be amazing. And honestly, Michael Cera as Robin is really great and really funny. And I'm not the biggest Michael Cera fan, but he nails it in this movie. And I don't know if they've announced if they're doing a sequel for this, but I really hope they are because it was so great, and I would watch a million of these. And I actually haven't even seen the Lego movie. So this was the first one I saw, and now I really want to go back and watch it. I mean, I've always wanted to watch the Lego movie, but now I really want to go back and watch it just because they did it so well with Batman that I want to see what they did before that everybody else had already loved. But yeah, it's the cast of voice actors is so great, and Zach Galifianakis is the Joker. I wasn't sure I was going to like him as much just because they've used other voice actors for Lego Joker in previous games. I thought he was done really well, but Zach Galifianakis did a great job, and the whole theme of the movie is Batman being alone and Joker being his other half, and Batman doesn't see it that way. Like, they keep asking him who his greatest villain is, and he keeps saying Superman, and that was some really funny stuff. And I would actually like to see them do another one of these Lego movies, and the whole Justice League is in this movie, but very briefly, and I would like to see them all get more of their own screen time and do a Lego Justice League movie. I think that would be really fun. But if not, just keep making Lego Batman movies because it was great. It had some great themes. It's super fun for adults, and I mean, kids will obviously love it. But it's so far, I think it might be my favorite movie of the year because I'm pretty sure it came out this year. But yeah, so those are all the movies I saw. Those are all my thoughts on them. Highly recommend 3 of them. And Resident Evil is just, I was hoping to watch Get Out this weekend, but unfortunately didn't have the time because that's one I wanted to watch with my wife as well because I know she wants to see it. But I managed to cram in a lot of movies this weekend, so I definitely thought I should talk about them. But that's all I got. So don't forget to look up that script for Friday's episode where we will talk Wonder Woman. And we do have another superhero script coming next week, which you might be able to sneak peek at the Tumblr. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to my reviews. If you want to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram, it's @ShelvedPodcast. And if you want to email the show, you can at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of those movies if you saw them. Hey, I really want to hear from somebody who has not played the Resident Evil games but is a fan of the movies. I need to hear from you. I want to know what you like about these movies. I want to hear it. And I know a lot of people refer to them as guilty pleasures, and that's fine, but I want to know. I want to know what you like about them. I want to know what you think about the stuff that's crammed in from the games that you've never played the games. So if anybody is a fan like that out there, please let me know. I want to hear it. But that's going to be it for today's episode. Be sure to check back on Friday for Wonder Woman, which I think is going to be a great episode. And thanks for listening.